So when you think about negotiation, what's the first thing that pops into your head? Probably, a stiff boardroom, salary talks.
Maybe buying a car.
Yeah, buying a used car.
Yeah.
But what happens when the stakes aren't, 10% off, but are actually life and death?
Right.
We're talking about the highest stakes environment there is, the FBI hostage negotiation unit.
And that is the intense foundation we're diving into today. Our source material is drawn right from that playbook, specifically from Chris Voss's 2016 book, Never Split the Difference.
And our mission for this deep dive is, well, it's really a practical shortcut. We're going to try to extract the core and often completely counterintuitive strategies from the FBI approach.
You can see how they apply in your life.
Exactly. Moving these tactics from the crisis room into, your everyday life, negotiating a contract, or even just trying to get a straight answer out of your teenager.
And the central idea here is this really radical rejection of compromise. We've all been taught to split the difference, right? But Voss just argues that compromise usually means both people are settling for something they don't really want. Instead, he focuses on deep, active listening, emotional intelligence, and something he calls tactical empathy.
Okay, let's unpack that term right away. Tactical empathy. It sounds a little clinical, maybe even manipulative.
It can sound that way.
How is it different from just, being nice or showing normal empathy?
Well, standard empathy is about understanding how someone feels. Tactical empathy is about understanding why they feel that way and then being able to articulate it back to them.
Ah.
And using that knowledge to actually influence their next move. So it's not about agreeing with them. It's about showing them you get their perspective so thoroughly that they drop their guard.
So it's a tool.
It's a tool of influence, not just connection.
That makes a lot more sense. We're kind of moving beyond just good manners and into actual behavioral science. So if the goal is a better result, why is emotion so central? Don't you want a logical outcome?
Because the core argument of the whole book is that humans are fundamentally irrational.
Right.
We like to think we're logical, but we're driven far more by emotions. So if you want someone, whether they're a hostage taker or just holding up a project deadline, to make a logical decision, you have to deal with their emotional needs first.
And what are those needs?
It boils down to two things: their fear for their safety and their need for control. Logic only becomes accessible once you've satisfied those feelings.
Okay, so that foundation leads us to this really critical mindset shift he talks about. He says the goal is to get a very specific 3-word response from the other person. You want them to say, "That's right."
Exactly, not "you're right." And the difference is huge.
"You're right" is what you say when you want someone to stop talking.
It's a deflection. It's polite, but it's a way of saying, okay, I hear you. Now can I get back to my point? But when they pause and they say, "That's right," that's an emotional breakthrough.
It means you've really heard them.
It means you've summarized their position so accurately that they feel completely and totally understood. Trust is built, and now they're ready to listen to you.
And how you deliver that understanding is just as critical as the words. This is where he brings in what he calls the late-night DJ voice.
Yes, it's an essential de-escalation tool. The tone you're going for is calm, collected, and it uses this gentle, downward inflecting cadence.
Like you're reassuring someone.
You're conveying safety and certainty. Just imagine a late-night radio host, that slow, steady voice. It signals to the other person that you're in control of your emotions, which helps them start to regain control of theirs. It just slows everything down.
And speaking of slowing things down, here's another one of those completely backward ideas. Voss says the word no should be the starting point of a negotiation.
It's so counterintuitive.
We're all conditioned to run away from no and chase yes.
Right, because we think yes means success. But when you push for a yes too early, like, "Do you have 5 minutes to chat about my raise?" The other person feels cornered. Their defenses go up.
So no makes them feel safe.
Exactly. It makes them feel like they've asserted control and kept their autonomy. They said no, so now they're safe.
So you should actually set up the questions so they can say no.
Precisely. You start by asking something like, "Is now a bad time to discuss the new project?"
Or, "Is this proposal completely out of the question?"
Perfect. When they say no, what they mean is, "No, it's not a bad time," or "No, it's not out of the question." They feel in control, they feel safe, and now, paradoxically, the real conversation can actually start.
That sets the perfect psychological stage. Okay, let's get tactical now. The core active listening tools that start his whole 9-step process. Tool number 1 is, well, it's almost laughably simple: mirroring.
Mirroring is deceptively powerful. It's just the mechanical process of repeating the last 1 to 3 critical words the other person said.
So if your client says, we just can't meet the deadline because our team is stretched thin, you just say,
Stretch thin.
yeah, and then silence.
Yes. And that part feels incredibly awkward, but that awkwardness is the point.
It forces them to elaborate.
It encourages them to reveal more without you having to ask an aggressive question. The focus stays on them, and they feel compelled to fill that silence. They end up giving you information they never planned on sharing.
So once they start opening up for mirroring, the next tool is labeling. This is where we try to name their feelings.
Right, and you're trying to preempt an emotional outburst. But the phrasing here is absolutely key.
You have to be tentative.
Always tentative. You use phrases like, it seems like, or it sounds like. You don't ask, are you angry? You state, it sounds like you're frustrated with the lack of communication.
And what that does is it sort of diffuses the emotion just by naming it.
It takes the sting out of it.
But what happens if you get the emotion wrong? Doesn't that just make them angrier?
That's the beauty of it. It's a manageable risk. If you get it wrong, say you label them as angry when they're actually just stressed, they'll immediately correct you.
I'm not angry, I'm just...
Stretched thin. And congratulations, you just got more information, and you actually deepened the rapport. You showed you cared enough to even try to understand how they felt. That is tactical empathy in action.
Okay, so once that emotional safety is there, we move to the next tool. Calibrated questions. These are designed to shift control back to you, but without being aggressive.
We call them calibrated because they're very specific, open-ended questions. They're the how or what questions.
And you deliberately avoid why.
You never ask why. Why? Always sounds like an accusation. It makes people defensive. But a how question, it shifts their brain from making demands to solving problems.
So you're making their demand a shared problem? You mentioned the key example Voss uses.
The absolute classic calibrated question is, how am I supposed to do that?
Right.
Imagine the supplier demands an impossible price. Instead of arguing, you just calmly ask, how am I supposed to justify a cost that high to my board? It forces them to stop thinking about their demand and start thinking about the reality of your position.
It's so powerful, but so subtle.
It gives you control without ever seeming aggressive.
And this brings us to a huge warning from the book, one that applies to basically every high-stakes situation. Do not rush to a solution.
Absolutely not. Especially after you ask a calibrated question. If you accept that emotions derail logic, then speeding things up is the worst thing you can do.
You have to embrace the silence.
You have to. After you ask, how am I supposed to do that? Just be quiet. Give them time to think. Rushing just signals that you're desperate, and it undermines all the empathy you just built. Silence is your friend.
Let's elevate this a bit now and move into some of the advanced tactics, the ones for really high-stakes outcomes. Let's start with the accusation audit. This feels like some kind of psychological reverse engineering.
It is pure psychological jujitsu. You neutralize negativity before it can even start. What you do is you preemptively voice all of the other person's worst-case fears and objections about you.
You essentially list all of your own flaws, or the deal's flaws, up front. Why on earth is that effective?
Because those negative thoughts are already in their head anyway. By saying them out loud first, you drain their power. You show you're confident, you're honest. So if you're pitching a new expensive service, you start the meeting by saying, you're probably worried this proposal is ridiculously expensive, that we're too big to give you personal attention, and that this whole meeting is a waste of your time.
Wow, you just take all their ammunition away.
Exactly. You take the air out of their tires. Now, the rest of the conversation can be about solutions, not about them defending against your sales pitch.
Okay, the next tactic is about finding information you didn't even know you were looking for. He calls it hunting for black swans.
Black swans, yeah. In negotiation, these are the unknown unknowns, the little pieces of information that, once you find them, can completely change the entire landscape of the deal.
So how do you hunt for something when you don't even know what it is?
Well, again, it's not by aggressive questioning. It's through that tactical empathy and doing really thorough summaries.
Ah, back to the that's right principle.
Back to that. You summarize their situation, their feelings, the consequences, so accurately that they feel compelled to correct you or add a detail. In the book, he talks about summarizing a kidnapper's situation, and the kidnapper accidentally corrects them and reveals a key detail about their guards.
A detail they didn't even know to ask about.
Exactly. In business, you might summarize a client's challenges, and they'll say, well, that's right, but you also don't know that we have an internal audit next month, and boom, there's your black swan. It changes everything.
Okay, let's bring it down to the most common thing in any negotiation. Numbers. Voss has very specific rules for using numbers to frame perception. Rule 1 is to use odd, really specific numbers for your anchor.
That's right. When you make your first offer, your anchor, you don't use a round number like $50,000.
You'd say something like 48,650.
Exactly. Or, in a big deal, $1.97 million instead of $2 million.
Why does that work?
It creates this immediate psychological impression that you've done some very deep, sophisticated research to get to that exact figure. It makes your number feel grounded in hard data, not just pulled out of thin air, so they treat it with more respect.
And the second rule for numbers is to use ranges.
Yeah. Using ranges like, this project will take between 9 and 11 weeks, does a couple of things. First, it gives them a bit of psychological flexibility so they feel like they're choosing.
And they feel like they're in control.
And second, most people will naturally gravitate toward the higher end of the range you give them, which obviously works in your favor.
So we've built rapport, we've pulled out information, we've anchored the price. The last crucial step is getting a real, dependable commitment. We have to move beyond just a vague yes.
Because a simple yes is often just an escape hatch. It's a way for someone to end an uncomfortable conversation. To get a real commitment, you have to end the negotiation by getting answers to how questions. You have to ask, how will we proceed from here? Or how will we ensure the contract is signed by Tuesday?
You're locking in the implementation.
You're locking it in and establishing accountability. It stops the agreement from just evaporating the moment you leave the room.
So let's zoom out. What does all of this deep dive into FBI tactics mean for you, the listener? You're probably not talking down a suspect. But we are all in negotiations where we feel like we have less power.
That's the key. The relevance is universal. Whether you're dealing with a difficult vendor or managing a conflict at home, Voss's message is that empathy isn't weakness. Tactical empathy is actually the ultimate power in what we call an asymmetric negotiation.
Where the power feels unbalanced.
It completely levels the playing field.
But that power needs to be validated. If you're relying so much on these emotional cues, how do you really know if you've got a genuine deal or someone is just, deceiving you to get you out of the room?
And that brings us to this final, crucial verification method. The rule of 3.
The rule of 3.
A single yes is not enough. To break through any possible deceit or just, confusion, you have to get them to confirm the agreement 3 distinct times, using 3 distinct methods.
Okay, so break that down. What are the 3 confirmations?
So first, you might get them to agree to a summary of the deal. That gets you that's right.
Okay.
Second, you'd immediately follow up with a calibrated how question about implementation. How will we handle the payment?
And the third?
The third might be a final direct question to get that formal verbal yes. If they can confirm it 3 different ways, summary, implementation, and affirmation, it proves they're engaged, they're clear, and they're committed. It exposes any lingering doubt.
That is a masterclass in influence. Thank you for this deep dive into the psychology of all this.
My pleasure. And here's a final provocative thought for you to consider, based on the source material. Given how much Voss emphasizes that all of us are driven by these primal fears for safety and control, how might you use the accusation audit? Not on your counterpart, but on yourself.
What do you mean?
What if you neutralized your own greatest fears and anxieties before you even walk into a stressful negotiation? Think about the self-talk it would take to preempt your own personal panic buttons.